Welcome to the Play It By Ear podcast. The podcast where the topics may vary because, hey, we play it by ear. And now your hosts, Aric Fiscus, Brady Liming, and Todd Griffin.
Welcome to episode 22 of the Play It By Ear podcast, vodcast. I don't know what medium you're listening or watching us on, but either way, welcome. Still haven't really determined what we call ourselves here now.
I think looking at us, we should call it the podcast.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some manly men sitting here, I'll tell you what. Hotcast. You do see a different face sitting here if you were watching our Facebook Live here moments ago. We told you that our voice, the voice of the Play It By Ear community, Matt Vaughn, is with us. Our first guest host.
That's me.
Right here.
I'm Matt.
So if you enjoy our intro and outro, he's the voice.
And if you don't, he's the voice.
Exactly. Hopefully you enjoyed our first video podcast on YouTube and you became a subscriber to our YouTube page, and you can of course get notifications of when those come out every week. Of course you can also find us on the audio side of things on all the usual locations, Spotify being our biggest, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, among others, iHeartRadio, again among others. Most anywhere you can find a podcast you can probably find us. So enjoy us any way you like. Hopefully you enjoy us in some way. Let's just put it that way. All right, so the way this is going to work, there are four of us. Now, we're not going to subject you to another 20 minutes of whatever topic we pull out of our collective hind ends on any particular day. But today, Brady has so graciously given up his 20 minutes to our guest, and he will go in the middle segment. We'll let him get his bearings in this whole operation here, because it is a high-class, professional-type operation here.
High stress. A lot on the line here, boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Although it's funny for us to talk about how we want to not subject our listeners as far as time, because I believe we've gone over the 2 hour. Are we going over the 2 hour mark?
No, we've not been over 2 hours.
We were close. We were close. And
hour 45 on the Founders Day.
Yeah, but we felt this was the best way to try it. We may change our minds, and on the next guest decide to do 4, which is a trial and error. So,
or you may change our minds. You're the ones that change our minds. We certainly want to hear from you in any medium possible. Facebook, email, whatever.
If you're saying more, we'll give you more.
Exactly. Yeah. Instagram. One of you was supposed to take over this Instagram thing, because I can't deal with Instagram. I don't know about Instagram.
I do the band's Instagram, and I do nothing on. I haven't grabbed it by the horns and to do it much with it. I think I feel old. I feel too old to run Instagram.
I'm with you. It seems like people use that, but I don't use it. So can't deal. Matt, do you use Instagram?
Oh, no, I've tried, but oh, good lordy. It just seemed really... What's a nice way to say stupid?
I think you just said it.
Yeah. Ignoramus, to quote Cracker Barrel's little game at the table.
When you leave too many pegs.
Yes.
So with my position with 4 of us here, I'll be referred to as the Shadow Man tonight, because I have the diagonal shadow across my face.
That sounds mysterious.
If you guys can call me Shadow Man, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Right.
Duly noted.
Shadowman.
Well,
I'm sorry, it would be Shadowman, yes.
Well, Shadowman, you're going to start us out tonight, so you can take topic number 1.
Okay, topic number 1. I would like to misquote my wife. And the reason I'm going to misquote her is because I can't remember verbatim the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of her. For years, she's claimed that she felt ripped off for her teenage years because we had to deal with grunge, to where, like, you know, her older brother and the music that she really is the most fond of, being 80s music, those teenagers in the 80s got to have the decade of fun, the big hair, the rock and roll that we did not get to experience as teenagers. So I thought it would be fun to do a music topic, and we have Matt is not only a guest host, but he's also a musician. Many years experience playing music, including about 14 with myself and with Brady. So I thought a music topic would be a good idea. So what I thought we could talk about would be just decades of music. And to narrow it down, decades in our lifetime. So, this would be 70s, 80s, 90s, 2010s,
2010s.
And just kind of maybe go a little bit of a round table about what we feel is the best decade, why something was not the best decade, and just kind of take it from there. So, does that sound good?
Sounds good. Or maybe a pros and cons thing.
Pros and cons, yeah, that would work. Yeah,
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and true to the organicness, is that a word?
It is now
of our podcast. Again, we create on the fly, so we had not talked about doing this in a pros and cons style, but I like it. So let's run with that. Brady, if I can put you on the spot, since you are giving up your topic tonight, could you start us out and give us? You want to start out with your favorite decade of music?
I will do that. I am going to be called a, what's the word I'm looking for? A heretic. I got to say the 80s is my favorite. A heretic.
Okay.
I'm going to say the 80s is my favorite decade. It's the decade of my youth, my coming of age years, and it's the music I enjoyed the most. It's what I grew up on. Now, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. I know that that's not what the music critics like to say. Rolling Stone magazine gets to write the history of rock and roll for some reason.
Yeah.
And, they'll say the 60s or the 70s. Now, I enjoy the 70s music, but the 80s brings it home for me. The excess of new wave and one-hit wonders and hair metal. And back when just rock and roll was in the top 10, like somebody like Bryan Adams or Don Henley could be in the top 10. It didn't have to be all R&B based or rap based or metal based. It was a diverse top 40, a very diverse top 40 in the 80s. And you don't see that in the other decades, because once the 80s became the 90s, R&B and pop music in its most synthetic, is that the best way to put it? Mm-hmm. Starts rolling the top 10. So yeah, 80s is my favorite. And I still will stand by that 1983 was one of the greatest music years of all time. Well,
what would you say if you had to pick? You just mentioned the diversity of the 80s. So I'm going to put you even a little more on the spot and say, what would you think would be the highlight of the 80s for you? Out of that diversity, if you had to just pick one.
That's a difficult question because, I like the noodle and guitar some. So the hair metal and Van Halen, is very instrumental in what I play. Mm-hmm. But man, the music that just sent me was, like I said, like Duran Duran, Huey Lewis and the News. A big Duran Duran fan. Like I said, I've said in previous episodes, I'll fight anybody that calls them a boy band.
Well, I think you picked John.
Yeah.
As your bassist in your supergroup?
Yes.
Wasn't he your bass pick?
Yeah, absolutely he was.
I think he might have been mine as well. Yeah.
And so my highlight, it's hard to pick a highlight, but that year of 1983 when there was a lot of, like I said, one-hit wonders and established bands. You had everything from Come On Eileen and Take On Me to, you had some Springsteen, you had some Prince. It was a little bit all over the place. So you had your established and your unestablished and your new, and recording techniques were becoming different. You had synthesizers readily available, and so it was all over the place. So that's why I kind of like the '80s. It was definitely a experimental decade that people like to frown upon.
I think it depends on the people.
It does, absolutely.
I think from a musician standpoint, guitar-wise, and in many cases vocals, we had this talk when we had our supergroup talk. There's some, you got your Sebastian Bach, people like that whose voice I would put up against anyone's in any decade of music.
Right.
And then again, of course, Eddie Van Halen, all of your guitar gods. How are you going to knock those guys?
And I would have to mention, sorry, this is like one of the major part of the 80s. You had the video aspect. The visual aspect of the 80s is when music became visual, which some will say was a detriment because they said, Mick Jagger never would have, the Rolling Stones would have never broke in the 80s because they're not excessively attractive people at all.
What are you talking about?
So
Ron Wood doesn't look a day, or not. Keith Richards doesn't look a day over 97.
Yeah. So, Methuselah commented on Keith Richards' guitar playing in the Old Testament, I think. So, but yeah, it's also the visual aspect, the excitement.
There was a review in Exodus, wasn't there?
There was.
All right, Aric, you want to chime in? Matt, anybody want to go next?
Well,
I'll defer here.
Okay. Yeah. Brady, I'm glad you picked the 80s. That's actually was good, like my second favorite. I really did love a lot about the music from that decade. And when I was really young, some of my favorite bands were Stryper, Metallica, Megadeth, Weird Al.
Oh, yeah.
It's Weird Al a band.
Yes.
Actually, well, he's not, but he has a band.
He has a band, yeah.
Yes.
I remember one of his band members, their name is Bermuda Schwartz.
Really?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, and I'm not sure, Matt. I've seen Weird Al twice, including I got to take my kids a couple years back, and I will say he puts on a great concert.
Yeah.
It's a great show. Costume changes, the band is phenomenal. Yeah, I know he gets the credit, but his entire band is fantastic.
Yeah, I was supposed to see Weird Al when I was 16, and I was singing in the All Ohio State Fair Youth Choir. And but we didn't get to make it to the show, so we went to the show the next day, and I saw David Lee Roth. But that was
very
pretty
similar.
Fun, it was,
Very similar, yeah.
Almost exactly like.
Interesting, you picked Stryper in that.
Oh yeah, I had like 4 of their albums.
Yeah, great band.
Oh,
yeah.
they actually they just released a new album, and the lead singer Michael Sweet says it's his favorite. He thinks it's the best album they ever done.
And I know, Aric, you probably know this as well. Some of our vast knowledge of music trivia. Michael Sweet, obviously lead singer and guitar player of Stryper, also for a brief time filled in and sang for Boston. After Brad Delp. I believe it was right after
He passed away. Yeah.
Well, actually, he sang. I think he might have been singing with them when they got the guy from Home Depot because they've had two. It takes 2 singers to replace Brad Delp, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, so Michael Sweet sang with Boston for a little while. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So that was like I said, Brady. 80s was my second favorite. I'm gonna have to go with the 90s for my favorite because I'm just so many of my favorite bands and acts when I was in high school were just came from that decade. I mean, my favorites are definitely like Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, and now all of a sudden a couple of them are falling out of my head. Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana. I mean, just that whole era right there.
Did you say
it
Soundgarden?
reminds me of my youth.
I will say this.
People see that on video now, don't they? When I cringe,
they do. Yeah.
When I hear that Nirvana, and I cringe.
They will say this, and I've mentioned this before. I'm not a big Nirvana fan. I appreciate what they did for music. I think you can argue that a band. I don't have to be into a band or even really see their talent to appreciate what they do for the actual history of music, and they definitely what do you want to call it? They brought in an entire genre, but they weren't one of my favorites. Other bands you mentioned, Pearl Jam, STP, loved them. But I will say this about the 90s. I was a naysayer of the 90s music during the 90s, but I think it's aged much better than I ever dreamed it would. Mm-hmm. I see some of these tours getting together, and I'm like, and especially as it Everclear, bands like Third Eye Blind, as it went to kind of more of that, great music. And so I think the 90s got off to a slow start for me personally, but I think that it picked up. And I would actually argue with the diversity with what Brady was saying about the 80s, because when you look at Nirvana to a band like Sugar Ray or Third Eye Blind, not in the same wheelhouse at all, but yet in that same decade span. And then plus you still had some of that fun rap still in the 90s that was happening.
Now, see, that was probably one of my least favorite parts of the 90s is the songs that give you orders. Like the get up, get busy,
I will not get up, nor will I get busy.
yeah, I will not get my body on the dance floor.
And then there's that whole line dancing thing. There's a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want songs giving me orders. Yeah.
Matt, was some of that also, that would have been around the time you would have been starting to play guitar. So
Yeah.
probably something there. Same with me. I learned how, to this day, can't play a lot of the 80s stuff as far as, much of the noodling, as Brady put it. But yeah, I was picking up, I went a little more towards the pop punk route, the Green Day, the Blink-182.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I first started playing guitar, everybody was playing Nirvana.
Right.
It was...
Now, one of my top 3 favorite bands of all time came from the 90s. I'm a huge Oasis fan. And
I was waiting. I was wondering how long it would take.
Let's see your cringe, Aric. You gave it for Nirvana. You gotta give it...
to me, Oasis saved the 90s because, it went from the detuned, grungy sound, and they brought some of that classic rock and roll with a little bit of, optimism and fun. And now I know they have odious personalities, but they kind of saved the 90s for me.
Odious. Good word.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Oasis fan. They were a little too noise pop for me. You listen to... I never was a fan of a lot of their songs. Like, their guitar tone seemed just...
Very noisy.
And then I like to pick out dumb lyrics in songs.
Oh.
And one of my favorite, obviously, Van Halen and Sammy Hagar has some of the dumbest lyrics ever. Only time will tell if we stand the test of time. That's just dumb. But Oasis.
But it is correct.
Slowly walking down the hall faster than a cannonball. Cannonballs are fast. So slowly walking down the hall faster than a cannonball makes no sense to me.
Brady has an explanation. Yeah.
Because he was stoned out of his mind, even though he was moving slowly, he was moving fast. So he was slowly walking down the hall, but it felt like he was going faster than a cannonball because of the nose candy that he had ingested.
Gotcha. It makes sense. When you know the meaning behind it. But that line always...
I've often wondered about that. When I finally heard about it, it made sense.
Context is everything.
Yeah. But this would probably be a little more filling conversation if we had some bands, because I'm forgetting who was who when. I mentioned Third Eye Blind. That would have been mid to late 90s.
Goo Goo Dolls.
Goo Goo Dolls. That's what I mean.
Boy Named Goo was one of my favorites.
Goo Goo Dolls. Collective Soul. I still say Collective Soul is one of the best live rock bands I've ever seen.
Jane's Addiction.
Wasn't a big fan of Jane's Addiction.
Yeah, I was hit or miss. Red Hot Chili Peppers, even though they formed in the 80s, they really hit their stride in the 90s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. I do think that we talk about presidents. History will be kind to a certain president. Or history will judge a president differently than when they were in office. I think the 90s could definitely. I will say it's aged well. Still not a Nirvana fan, but thanks to Nirvana, we have the Foo Fighters, which I think is one of the greatest rock bands ever as well.
And
so
I'm going to give a segue to Aric because I think he could comment on this. One of the reasons we reacted so poorly to the 90s when it happened, we came from the fun, optimistic 80s, and then all of a sudden the 90s became very pessimistic.
Dark.
Yeah, and that's what Sia is talking about in her, hey, they got to have this, this fun, this carefree, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Carefree, I guess. At least
it was optimistic.
Yeah.
It was all about the possibilities, the shining city on the hill,
And when you had this conversation, of course, I've been sitting here listening to all of you, and I think you, there are a lot of valid points there, and I did cringe with the Nirvana reference, which I will always cringe at a Nirvana reference, but I will say this about them, and this is probably the first good thing I've ever said about them. So you're going to witness my history here. They did put an edge on the music that came after them. Mm-hmm. And it maybe at times, and I will kind of reference what Celia said and what Brady just said, maybe at times the 80s were a little too fun. There wasn't any depth to it, per se.
I can agree to that.
So I will give a nod to Nirvana that they did put the edge on the music. The music that came after them, and you reference the Goo Goo Dolls and things like that, I did like that. But I probably liked it better because Nirvana's influence put the edge on it.
Yeah.
if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss, and you mentioned Striper, and I'm going to kind of nudge my wife here because we were having a conversation with some of our friends, and she saw a Tesla album cover, and she said, "Oh, that's that religious band." I said, "No, you mean Striper." Oh, so every time Tesla comes on, it's that religious band. Well,
Yeah.
not quite.
Great band, by the way,
Yeah.
Tesla.
Oh, yes.
Well, and Tesla's one of those bands that, when you look at grunge, I mean,
You could see the seeds of it there.
you could, but you could also see how like bands like Tesla and some of the bands that didn't start Extreme, that didn't start getting grunge, definitely killed their momentum. You know, there's a story there. I don't know it exactly, but I think it was an Axl Rose or somebody one, or maybe it was Warren. Maybe it was some band is known for, like, I guess they had flew in or something and saw. There's a story about them seeing Nirvana advertise or something like that, and like, we're done. Like they knew that. I don't know that story. It's
The one
somebody.
that comes to my mind is when Winger was on tour and they were on the bus and they were watching a videotape of Beavis and Butthead when the nerd Stewart was wearing a Winger T-shirt, and they said, "We're done."
Yeah.
That killed. I mean, they still think that Beavis and Butthead killed their career.
Yeah. Well, and I know I had read from a magazine one time about Axl specifically, about how his struggles with Kurt Cobain and with that coming up, and he kind of knew, that he was fighting a losing battle at that point. I think that's another thing that's impressive about that early '90s music, is how not only did they usher in a new genre, but they pretty much
Killed
put
a
an
decade.
end to it. That's,
They did.
and historically, that's pretty impressive. Whether we like it or not, it's pretty impressive. It's powerful.
Well, and I'm going to give you my thumbnail sketch. I don't know if we've ever had this conversation or not, but again, me being a history guy, you look back on the history of whatever you're looking at, and in this case, music. But I've often said, maybe to myself, I know I've said it to somebody, but a decade's music doesn't take hold until 3 years in. And if you look at any decade, I mean, even start the 70s, and we're looking at our lifetime, a lot of the stuff prior to, let's say, 73 sounded a lot like the stuff in the 60s.
It was Summer I Love Woodstock stuff.
Right. You look at the 80s, you talk about 83, I think that's when the hard reset took place. And some of that stuff going on in the 90s, which really changed after Nirvana, like you said, was kind of all thrown into that 1 year in 83. You had the new wave stuff, you still had stuff that was hard rock from the 70s, all of it was there. Nirvana was 92, 93, and that hard reset happened. Mm-hmm. So I think historically speaking, you can kind of look at it like that, and it really doesn't add to the conversation of my preference, but...
Well, I think it's a good point. And something else, too, is we're all fans of live music. And you watch, Aric, I'll bring up Styx in particular, because I know you're the world's biggest Styx fan. How many times have you seen Styx? Do you know yet?
I don't even know.
Yeah. But you go see Styx, and it's a, I'm going to show my age here, but it's a CD quality concert every time. You don't go hear Styx mess up.
No.
And you don't even go hear them have a bad night. You don't say, well, boy, they were off tonight. It's always pristine. I bring REO Speedwagon into it because most of the time I've seen Styx, REO Speedwagon's been with them. Again,
right.
Pristine live concert. And when the 90s first happened, it's almost like some of those bands got big before their talent really
Caught up.
You know what I mean? And there's no doubt, Matt, you're a guitar player, bass player, piano player. Playing a Nirvana song is not as technically difficult as playing. But those bands, you watch like Pearl Jam and things like that, when you watch them 10 years later, 15 years later, and you see how they've honed their musicianship. Mm-hmm. I mentioned Collective Soul. Even if you don't like Collective Soul, if you were to go see them live, they are now at that same level that a Styx is, to where every
mm-hmm.
night in, night out, other than the house maybe having bad sound or something, but
right.
the band itself, and I think it's also at our age, that's where we were first seeing bands live. It was,
right.
It might have been a wild and crazy rock show or whatever you were wanting, but it didn't have that pristine that the late 70s and early 80s bands were starting to get. But think about how many years it took them to do that. I guarantee if you saw Styx in 1981, you probably had a good chance of seeing them have an off night or have a night where it was pristine. So that plays into it as well, I think.
And then like a lot of the '70s bands, take Zeppelin, the Rolling the Rolling Stones '60s and '70s, but sometimes you weren't sure what you were going to get because of the substance use. Even the Eagles. Think about how amazing the Eagles are, and there were some times that Joe Walsh was really wrecked. He had a difficult time performing. Even in country, I mean, my uncle saw George Jones start the concert. The drums started, George Jones walked out and passed out, and they canceled the show.
Yeah.
It was over.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I've heard people before, like, talking about rock and roll and, the whole drugs and alcohol and all that, and how they act like it's a rock and roll thing. No. It was an old country thing as much as it was, as anything.
I mean, Hank Williams was not a choir
exactly.
boy.
And George Jones was known for being too drunk to perform and things like that. He was the Axl Rose before Axl Rose, as far as Axl Rose was notoriously 2 hours late to concerts and things that. So I think, Aric, I know which decade you're going to pick, but pick your decade.
Well, I mean, you might be surprised. I would go with the 80s, although the 80s and the 70s are pretty close. And I would go with the 80s for what Brady said.
Yeah.
Because I do have that affinity for the upbeat, new wave-ish sort of music, and I would concur with him. I mean, 1983, as far as breadth of music, the different styles that were all very listenable, all that year.
I mean, we jammed out to Aretha Franklin,
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin, let me rock you, Aretha Franklin, let me rock
Rapping
Duke.
Duke.
But what was the Aretha Franklin song that I
Freeway of Love.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was after 83, but
Yeah, but Aretha Franklin and Van Halen existed in the same top 10 on MTV.
Yep, exactly.
I thought you would go 70s. I see what you're saying about the 70s. I thought you would go 70s, but I would say if we're picking a second favorite, 70s would be my favorites. But it took me a while to appreciate the 70s.
After we brainwashed you.
Well, but I was going to say, Aric, you single-handedly had probably more to do with my taste in music than anyone else, and that's why at 15, 16 years old, I was going to see Steve Miller Band and things like that when bands like Nirvana and those bands would have just been starting. But when I say appreciate it, I always liked the 70s. Once I started hearing it, but the musicianship, and as a guitar player, the 80s is what blows me away. But as a bass player, the 70s blows me away. The 80s were not known for great bassists. No. Again, we talked about Duran Duran, but
Billy Sheehan.
But Billy Sheehan again. But the 70s, man, and not an underrated bassist. I bring up Skinner a lot, but the other night, Devin's dad, we were at a get together at Devin's, and his dad asked me, he's like, on the spot, he's like, top 5 best bands ever, favorite bands ever, and I couldn't get past 3. Right off the bat, Skinner, Zeppelin, and Boston. Those were and those are always in my top 5 list. But after that, I can't really pick. But then you take those bands. Nobody ever says, "Hey, I like Boston because of their bass player."
Right.
But when you listen to the bass work in Boston, it is phenomenal. Yeah. And you listen to the bass work in Skinner. Leon Wilkinson was an amazing bass player that gets no credit whatsoever. Mainly because it's bass, but also because people aren't listening for it. They don't know what to listen for, or their ear isn't trained what to listen for. But the 70s had just the best bass players in the business.
A lot of that music in the 70s was more bass-centered.
It did. It danced around the bass more. And then I think also a lot more, okay, in the 80s, and this is just my opinion, so listeners, you can crush me if you like here, but in the 80s it was all about the guitar. So the bass players were asked to step back, lay down a beat, lay down a rhythm, and just write it out.
Yeah.
In the 70s, the bass work was done a lot more like guitar, like just a rhythm guitar, an additional guitar. And I go back to Skinner here because the third guitarist, that Ed King became the third guitarist for Skinner. In the first Skinner album, which a lot of the big hits, Freebird, Tuesday's Gone, Simple Man, Ed King actually played bass.
Right.
And he admittedly he played like a guitar player. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's the biggest difference, I think. Where in the 80s it was, hey, just hammer on the notes and the chords and let the guitar player shine. Where the 70s it was like, hey, look at Sabbath. I mean, look how important the bass work is to that band as far as the rhythm section compared to, again, a
Whitesnake.
a Whitesnake or a Poison or somebody like that.
Right.
Matt, you play bass. I mean, do you notice a difference in decades between the bass work?
Oh, absolutely. And yes, you are correct. I did pretend to play bass there for quite a while.
You're a hell of a bass player, man.
But if you'll excuse me, I might have to clear my throat a little bit. I brought an extra large bucket of COVID with me today.
There we go.
So,
Pardon me.
is there any decade that what would be your least favorite?
I could tell you personally, I rebelled against the 70s. I didn't start liking 70s music till I was an adult.
Yeah.
In fact, probably still, and once again, this is not disparaging the artist, but I could tell you my least favorite genre of rock is the whole Carly Simon, Carole King.
The singer-songwriter person,
Yeah, I'm not.
James Taylor.
And I like James Taylor, but it's just so.
I couldn't stay awake during a James Taylor concert. I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah. But, and then of course, it got to be fun to make fun of 70s music. And now I like the whole yacht rock thing, the
Yeah.
overproduced 70s. I mean,
Right.
how many times did we make fun of Brandy?
You're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be.
But some of that music is and I'm like you, I never had much of a place for it. But then if I go see bands and they whip some of that stuff out, it's a blast.
Yeah.
It's
See, I love that stuff.
Yeah, and I don't even want to call it ironically funny because that makes it sound like I'm being too cool and sneery. But disco. I mean, I had when I was a Ute, disco was that stuff. Oh my God, bell bottom. It's just like John Travolta white suit.
I think disco caused us to be dressed like we were dressed. That was the problem with that.
But you talk about again the versatility or the hodgepodge of the variety in the 80s, but 70s had it too when you think about it.
It did.
You mentioned how the early 70s was still kind of the
Summer
hippie,
love, yeah.
60s extended.
and then it went into the ballsy rock. Your Led Zeppelin, and then you had the disco.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big disco fan, but I'm a huge Bee Gees fan, believe it or not. I still,
Like the falsetto.
well, I just think the Bee Gees are one of the most talented, probably one of the most talented groups ever. I mean, when it
My
comes to-
brother-in-law, Greg Inbone, watching out there, he told me a factoid that the Bee Gees were the first band to have a top 10 hit in 4 decades. So they had a hit in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s.
Well, and plus, wasn't it the Bee Gees who are kind of known on record, which goes to show you it just all comes back around.
Yeah.
We talked about the 80s hair metal guys knowing that they were, it was over for them once
Right.
Nirvana was and other grunge bands. I believe, wasn't it the Bee Gees who kind of knew that the Beatles were kind of the end of their,
Right.
the end of their run or the end of their dominance. It seems like I remember reading something about that. How that
Yeah,
went.
and then the Bee Gees, of course, went from that basic rock, pop rock, to the whole disco sheen. And
Yeah.
Styx had a top 10 hit under 4 presidents.
Really.
Yeah.
Of course, if you go back to decades before we were born, I 50s would have been I would have loved to have been around in the 50s, and being a huge Buddy Holly fan, I like to lecture people and let them know that if it weren't for Buddy, they wouldn't have a lot of their favorite bands
Right.
to this day. But obviously, this is just our own lifespan. So, Matt, what would be your least favorite if you had to pick a?
I was going to say 1860s because that's the decade that
You mean you
brought
don't
you
jam on
Banjo
the
Willie
Cantown
and the Jug
ladies?
Blowers.
Yeah.
But, since as
The Battle Hymn of the Republic.
You mean 1860s or 1960s?
1860s.
Okay.
the Sewanee River.
I didn't think
No,
we were
so-
live in the 60s. But
No,
If,
no Stephen Foster in your life.
Stephen, never mind.
So if I had to pick something from where I'm alive, I would say really anything after 2010. Now there's some really good stuff that's come out recently. I just really don't. The modern dance music it just grates on my ears.
Yeah, I can get it.
And just I don't know. It just makes me I cringe like Aric, you know.
Cringe like Aric.
Cringe like
You
Aric.
got the cringe like Aric.
See, now that's
That
going
could
to be a dance song.
Here
You know, it's going to be the cringe.
We should create a dance song.
You know?
But we probably should have opened with this disclaimer. Every decade is going to have its brilliance and some
Oh,
great
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the same way. I remember between 2000 and 2010, it's like, oh, this music just sucks. But looking back, some of it was okay. And then even now, the thing I would think has changed now, though, is a lot of the people that I end up really liking are bands that are not commercially successful or very, very big in general. You know, I talk a lot about Brian Fallon, the Gaslight Anthem, bands like that never make it as far as being just big-time bands. But to me, they're saving rock and roll. They're out there. You just got to dig them up.
Right, and Todd, that was good. My most underrated, I think, like besides the '80s and the classic rock, my favorite time period is about 2003 to 2010, because a bunch of bands like the Shins, Rooney, the Thrills.
You like any band with "the" in front of it?
Well, and actually they call out
Exactly.
the term.
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
Do you like the
the thes.
Isn't it
And-
the?
or is it the?
The.
The.
But and if you listen to Rooney, I mean
language.
they wear their Tom Petty love on their sleeves in multiple different kinds of things. So like I really enjoyed that, but 2010 is when the jig was kind of up. I agree, Matt, and it's not the get off my lawn. I just haven't found a lot of new music that moves me or sends me of late.
Yeah. Well, and then just like we're annoying to some people listening right now, as far as who maybe disagree with us,
Right.
It's such a fine line. You take a band. I'm going to end my part of this with the Nickelback argument.
Mm-hmm.
Hating Nickelback is the least amount of thought anyone ever put into music to form an opinion about it. There's nothing to hate about Nickelback. It's only cool to hate Nickelback because that whole wave of
Memes
and
and-
things like that. But when you look at the band just as a band, it's pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, their first hit, Matt Visceral used to do their 1998, 1999.
This is how you remind me.
Don't give my age away.
No, but what was the song?
Oh, gosh.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we're talking 21 years ago.
Leader of Men.
Leader of Man. Yeah, it was Leader of Man.
That's
and,
right.
And nobody made fun of them their first 5-6 years out. They were a huge band. But great band, great songs. If they were anyone else, they wouldn't get made fun of. But I just don't like it when somebody... And nobody can ever tell you why they hate Nickelback. I just hate Nickelback because it's cool to hate Nickelback. What do you hate about them? Is it their musicianship? No, they're good musicians. Is it they don't write hit songs? No, they've written a lot of hit songs. Is it staying power? Because how many bands stay around for 20 plus years? Especially in the 2000s. So, damn it.
They say his hair annoys them. I've actually heard somebody say that.
Yeah. Well, his hair is pretty annoying, but no. But seriously, there's.
The whole ramen noodle where it looks
Yeah.
like somebody's eating ramen noodles and it's his hair.
So anyway, I just wanted to end it with my rant of Nickelback.
Yeah.
We have hit our 20 minutes, but
But
past it.
if I may, I'll end it with this. Nickelback today is what Def Leppard's Hysteria was, where people got sick of them because there were so many hits on that album and too much overexposure. Nickelback with that, I forget what the name of the album that has Photograph and all that on it, they had 6 or 7 top 10 hits on that, and it just kind of, people got sick of their success.
Yeah.
I think you have a point there, Brady.
But like we've said before, though, look at Styx. How long has Styx been around? Like 40 years,
50.
50 years.
Wow.
And again, you go see them and you don't think, damn, these are a bunch of old guys up there. Some people are jerks about it, like well, these guys need to hang it up. Why? They're better than any. As far as their live output is still great. I go to an 80s hair metal festival every year, and those bands are still great. I hear all the time about, well, it's not the real band. People die, unfortunately.
Hey.
People move on. But it's the real music. And my argument to that is, okay, if I'm in a band and I'm in a hit band and successful, and somebody passes away, so does that mean I'm done? My career has to end.
Yeah.
I can't do anything else. I can't continue that music.
Well, the thing about Styx is you now have 2 factions of that band
True.
making outstanding music.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And they're still being relevant. I mean, Richard Butler of the Psychedelic Furs, I've seen them 3 or 4 times. He has one of the most energetic, frenetic performances you will ever see a frontman have. And he's in his 60s.
Yeah. Well, and you look at it, you go see Warrant.
Yeah.
Well, he's not Janie Lane. No, he's not Janie Lane. But he's still a damn good singer, and he does the songs justice. He's not there butchering them, although I have seen a Warrant singer butcher it. I'm not going to get into that. I have, but take a journey.
Oh yeah.
He's no Steve Perry. No, he's actually probably a better singer than Steve Perry.
And Steve Perry says that.
And Steve Perry says that.
Yeah.
But Steve Perry was the first, or the first one that anyone knew, and so people are always judged by that. So,
right.
Rant over. 70s, 80s, 90s. I think we covered a wide.
We did well.
Yeah.
I love how when you said that about, but it's the real music. You pointed at a can.
You just point this out. And Matt also, we like to pat ourselves on the back when we're done. We did good, guys. We did really good.
Yeah. Good job.
No one else tells us. So what I have here, folks, is a single can of Armour. Is it Armour, Armoire, Armour?
It depends on how pretentious you feel when you're eating it.
Well, I'm drinking Fiji water, so...
Well, then it's Armoire.
Well, if you really like it like Brady, you would call it Amore.
No, that's true.
Yes.
So
That's only when it's cooked, though.
I have a can of Armour Vienna sausages, or Salchicha de Viana.
For our Spanish listeners.
Yes, and it says right here they are America's favorite. So if you're American, this is your favorite.
If you don't like it, get out.
So this is here. If you wondered why this is here,
I would like to see Vienna's favorite Vienna sausages. Would
would
those
too.
be the true gold standard?
if
of
Vienna just says we don't eat this shit across the bottom of this. So anyway,
Americans love it. We don't eat it.
the reason it's here is because we thought it would kind of be fun for us, and hopefully you guys, now that you can see us, to maybe decorate our table with some throwbacks to previous episodes. And if you remember the Vienna sausage episode.
Episode 14.
Episode 14. But yeah, I didn't realize I was pointing to that when I was. Well, that's rock and roll, man.
Well, let's segue here. If you want to make some suggestions on the decoration of our table here with our artifacts, chime in. We need some character in the room here. So.
And I can tell you, these guys, they need help just thinking, period.
But what we might do, and I think we've passed on doing it tonight, but we also may very well in future episodes do some taste testing of some of our...
There better be a hot plate involved is all I gotta say.
Brady, I'm going to be honest with you, all you need to cook these is a hair dryer.
Yeah, or a
there's not
Bic.
much to that. All right.
Ooh. Yeah. With that, I haven't done that in a while. With that, you haven't grossed me out in a while where I've had to do a segue. We will defer to our guest host. He has our second topic of the evening. So, Matt?
Yes, I have it stored safely in my lockbox of the memory.
All right. Can you open the lockbox now? Do you know where the key is?
Yeah, no problem, Jeff.
Nice.
Subtle.
So
Subtle but piercing.
So, the topic I brought tonight was, what is one of the most inappropriate things that was taught to you by, like, your parents or your aunts and uncles and just and guardians in your life? What was just the worst thing they taught you? And I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with Aric.
Oh, you want to start with me?
Well, first off,
Yeah.
can I chime in? I'm pretentious. Aunts.
Aunts.
It's
Yeah, I was going to say. Wait.
You're in Brown County. It's ants.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, so you're putting me right on the spot there, huh?
Yeah.
I was hoping to let the conversation marinate first before I chimed in, but let me see. I was honestly, I can't get my lockbox open, so inappropriate things. Again, I put myself forward usually as someone who tries to gauge the appropriateness of any situation before I act. So I don't know that I've purposely done anything inappropriate, or maybe I have. Brady's smiling over here. He probably has something in his mind that I probably should be saying at this point. But
Well,
I do have a story. And I don't know, and I'm going to tell on myself here, but that's what we do here. So I'll just go ahead and do it. I do remember an instance where, and I don't want to say anyone taught me this, but I just kind of did it, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but someone thought there was something wrong with it. I was at a function, and this was as a 13-year-old, so just a teenager, when you really had look around and wondering what people are thinking of you, and you're taking that into account. And this function had food served, and part of the meal was a soup. So I got down to that area of the soup where you could no longer spoon it out.
Was it a cereal or a soup?
No, it was a soup, because I don't do cereal. Water or otherwise, or with a fork, or with a slotted spoon, or whatever method you use to eat your cereal. I don't do any of it. This is an actual soup. So I got down again to that area of the bowl where you could no longer spoon it out, or it was too much work to spoon it. And I tipped up the bowl, and and the person that was just shrieked in horror, almost like, you.
My God, Lovey,
how dare you?
he's drinking from the bowl.
So maybe I learned that in my living at home. I don't know, but again, I didn't think anything of it. But the people or the person there who expressed some great discontent with my actions there thought lowly of it. So,
and I would venture to say that's a pretty common. I mean, I do that to this day. I drink my whatever's left in the bowl, and at some point the spoon becomes useless.
yeah. Or less useful. I probably could have stood there another 5 minutes and.
Well, and you're just getting each pass. You're only getting a little tiny bit.
A couple drops of liquid.
Yeah.
Well, it's like buffalo wings that have the bones in them. It's too much work for the return.
You know what you need at that point? You need a sponge, a la bread, and just sop it up. Sop it up and
Sop.
And thinking back, I don't think the meal served the bread needed, and I guess crackers can also serve that purpose as well
that was the first problem.
if they're crumbled up.
Well, and
Talking about crackers
let's
earlier.
quick segue to
Exactly.
a personal gripe that I have, and we've talked about this many a times. Is what's the deal? As I go to Seinfeld here, what's the deal? What's the deal with one pack of crackers with a bowl of soup?
Oh, here we go.
And here's
I brought up the soup.
If I go to a restaurant and I get a cup of soup or a bowl of soup, I still get one cracker sleeve, one pack of crackers.
Skein.
One skein. One skin of crackers. What is the deal with that? So my cousin, John, we try and do last names here. My cousin John, he has the answer to that, and I used to make fun of him for other reasons beyond this, but just because whenever we went to a restaurant,
you make fun of him for a lot of reasons, not
well,
just this.
he makes fun of me as well. We've talked this before. When I order at a restaurant, I'm kicking the habit. But for years, whenever I talk, I'm pretty shy, believe it or not, especially when I first meet people. And so whenever I order, I rub my arms. And I got that from my dad. Speaking of people that teach us things, I mean, that's not inappropriate, but my dad kind of does the same thing.
I can't wait to hear about this.
When he's talking. So we rub our arms, and it makes me feel better, I guess, when I talk to a stranger, like a waiter or waitress. So for years, eating with...
Go ahead.
So for years, whenever I would eat with my cousin John, I would look over and I would be ordering, like, hey, I'll take a grilled cheese, and he's doing this, the whole like looking at me and rubbing his arms. So then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to nitpick at him and see what he says. So what he does when he orders is when he orders something, he always says your. So like if he's at Frisch's, he'll say, I'll take a bowl of your chili. They're not very good listeners. They're typical teachers, by the way. Terrible listeners.
I'm listening.
I'm hearing you.
So
I'm hearing you.
I'll take a bowl of your chili. And I'm like, who the hell's chili do you want them to bring you? You don't have to say your chili. Frisch's is going to give you their chili. They're not going to bring you Wendy's chili.
You go into Frisch and say, I want a bowl of Gold Star chili. Why don't you run down there and get that?
First off, if you're in Frisch's ordering Wendy's chili, you need to have your head examined anyway, because Wendy's chili is disgusting.
Oh, here now.
Here
Still.
now.
Anyway, it's not.
And who orders chili and Frisch's anyway? You order vegetable soup.
No. You get vegetable soup off the salad bar.
And Matt's sitting here thinking, where is my topic gone now? We've just gone way over there.
This is what we do, Matt, but let me get to my point. So we made fun of each other for our ordering habits, but then I noticed something, that he would order a bowl of chili, or wherever we were, or a bowl of soup, and he would say, like, I'll take a bowl of vegetable soup and 8 packs of crackers. And I thought that was the funniest. I'm like, 8? You know exactly how many it takes? I mean, and he's like, finally he said, well, the reason I do that is because if I say I want crackers, they bring me 1 packet.
Skeen.
If I say I want extra crackers, they bring me 2-3 skeins. So I tell them I want 8. That way I have enough.
So here's the question. If he gets a cup of soup, is it only 4 skeins of crackers?
Well, is a cup exactly half of a bowl?
Well, I don't know.
I always assume so.
Depends on the venue, I
I
guess.
guess so. So there's a little tip maybe for our listeners is if you have the same issue that we all have, they're making fun of me. They've had the same issue. You get 1 pack of crackers and you're pretty pissed off about it. Order.
No, I was laughing about you rubbing your arms.
But order an exact number of crackers. And I don't think they can turn you down. I don't think they can say, no, sir, you'll have 6 packs of crackers and you'll like
No means no.
Yeah, they haven't been able to turn you down for that since the legislation of 1982.
Yes.
What was that legislation? What was that?
House Bill 502.
House bill, stop being a smart terrier, Todd.
So anyway, Fiscus, carry on with your... I was supporting you, by the way. I think sopping up your soup with the bowl...
I appreciate that.
Your,
No, that was my story because that was the thing that immediately came to my mind.
So you don't know, does your dad do that? Was that something your mom did, your brothers?
I don't know where it came from, but like I said, apparently in my mind I didn't think anything of it, and you don't think anything of it. Brady, Matt, is this something that was way off the rails? I mean, if you were sitting in a public place and you got down to the end of the soup bowl, would you tip it up?
I would go with biting the ends off a Twizzler and using that as a straw.
Because you just happen to have a
Nice.
Twizzler in your pocket.
Well, you don't bring Twizzlers to the restaurant with you.
Good point.
Whatever floats your boat.
Brady's cringing. He's cringing over there.
Well, I should
Mr.
know better than to ask him anything in regard to common food eating practices over here.
Well, no, not cringing. I think I would have done it at home. I probably wouldn't have done it in public, because not for the reason you're thinking, but I'm afraid I would spill it all over myself. I'd be like, and then end up.
You get the dribble bowl.
Yeah.
And Matt, you're learning. We hijack and we go out. But if we can take this topic and come back to it in a second, but can we just talk food now for a second about this? Because you made me realize that my answer was not going to be food-based, but I do have some things now that I've noticed. I was probably 20 years old or older, and I was still, when I ate steak at a restaurant, I ate it with my fingers. Pulled it apart with my fingers.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. And then when I first started cutting the steak properly, it just felt awkward. I felt like I had 2 left hands trying to cut the steak. And so now what I do is something that I'm notorious for when it comes to eating any meats that need to be cut, is I don't use a knife. I use my fork only.
So going back to steak, how do you cut steak? Most steak you can't cut with just a fork.
It's called a steak knife, and I'm not being like...
No, I know exactly what you mean, but I'm not saying I won't. If I'm at a Jeff Ruby's or something where it's there's some properness that should be going on.
So you're aware of it then?
I'm aware of it, but I at least stop using my hands. But I at home I never use a steak knife. I always use my. But the problem is eating with me. You feel the tension on the table of me trying to cut it. Cut it with a fork.
Your Fiji water is about ready to fall.
I see that. So I guess if I can't cut it with a fork, then that's too tough for me.
I mean, like, you couldn't get away with that at, like, Ponderosa, where they're basically rat steak or shoe leather, Just,
Brady. Great, we're not going to get Ponderosa to sponsor us
Exactly.
now.
Well, no, there's a reason I got, because I got a couple tough steaks at Ponderosa in a row, and so I started jokingly calling it rat steak.
I will counter that, though, with I've had good steak.
Oh, yeah, I have two.
Yeah, I didn't realize that when you talked about the soup thing, is I used to get made fun of because I would tear my steak apart and eat it with my fingers.
Like a manimal.
Yeah.
So we're both Philistines then.
Brady, can you think of anything that you...
Oh, yeah. 2 words, Uncle Jimmy. He was, rest his soul. We lost him a few years ago, and he was my uncle that had a very irreverent sense of humor. And age appropriateness didn't seem to
Enter his line of thinking.
And my best Uncle Jimmyism goes back to the RV from the Great Atlanta Run story. And if you've ever tried to urinate standing in the RV, it's difficult if the road gets bumpy because, it's like, you kind of end up fire hosing it a little bit because, you're going over bumps and everything. And,
Let's not embellish, Brady.
God knows. And, but, no, but
Silly straw.
Yeah. So.
Guy humor. It's funny because it's true.
And females can attest to that too if they've ever had to clean the bathroom.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what happened. It was a rough patch of going to the 1982 World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee, and but after a particular rough stretch of road, I decided I need some paper towels because because it was really bumpy, and I kind of went AWOL, and my Uncle Jimmy.
It was P-Wall.
And this probably pushes TV 14, but he said, well, you know what they say. Be like Papa, not like Sis. Raise the lid before you...
Say it.
Yes.
Yes. So what is that again? Be like Popeye?
Be like Papa, not like Sis. Eat some spinach while I pee. But,
Be like Popeye, eat your spinach. Pee in the toilet, not up against it.
Actually, what I came up with is be like Popeye, eat your spinach, shut the lid when you're finished. Because that's totally on topic.
Be like Popeye, not olive oil. Pee in the toilet. Make sure that carpet's not soiled. There you go.
There you go.
Too wordy.
Are you gonna
Yeah,
blue down the Jeep?
I got halfway through it and I realized it's too wordy here to get my point
Too
across.
wordy.
I went to the well one too many times.
Yes, you did. That'll be on the next one.
But and the other one he mentioned, I just kind of plopped up on the table. I was sitting. He's like, you know what they say? Wait a minute. Tables for glasses, chairs are for asses, because I sat on the table. And
So whenever Uncle Jimmy said, "You know what they say,"
you better. You knew it was gonna get a little blue, but yeah, and my Aunt Cheryl would teach some pretty. What's the word I'm looking for? Randy and ribald jokes.
Ribald.
Ribald.
I like that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And I can't really tell them on air. But yeah, it was pretty shocking because I repeated it not really knowing meaning.
I have a proposal for a future topic. It would be fun, and typically we've talked before. We don't really plan much before as you can tell, we don't plan much before we record. But it would be fun to have an ode to your Uncle Jimmy, and to just come up with 20 minutes of new sayings we've come up with.
You know what they say
in that style, like you know what they say.
He who laughs last is the last laugher.
Well, that's already
Travis Dotson.
So that could be a future topic where we come up with our own Uncle Jimmy isms. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have much to add. I'm going to let you, Matt. I'm going to let you take it away here just a minute. But I would say I had an uncle. Unfortunately, he's passed as well. And I don't know that anything that I can say is clean enough to but what I'll say to that is. We had a conversation during one of the episodes. Aric, I remember it was an episode where we drew cards, and we had a pretty good conversation about our parents. It was good later to listen to, and it was one of my favorite conversations we've had. That wasn't really funny, but it was just a good, wholesome conversation. And one of the things that we talked about is where do we get some of the things, some of our own traits and things. So it kind of touches on what your topic is. And I was saying how my sense of humor is much different than my dad's or my mom's, but I can safely say that I got a lot of my sense of humor from this uncle that I'm talking about, and that's why it's slightly inappropriate a lot of times, my sense of humor. But one thing I can bring up, again, the poor listeners over there. I've seen some of Brady's drawings, by the way. We can't show them to the listeners.
Brady's writing his Randy and Ribald jokes here.
Anyway,
For $10 for subscribers, I'll tell you the joke. I'll text you the joke.
well, we've talked about having an adult-only podcast one time for this type of
Then
thing.
I can't come.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But my son, I remember it was a few years back, and he asked me what time it was, and without missing a beat, I gave one of my uncle's famous half past the monkey's ass, quarter to his balls.
Which the physicality of that whole statement never made any sense to me.
No, but it's funny.
It is fun.
And
It
I
is.
said it without. It was like you say something, you want to grab it before you. Like I said it, and my son looks at me and then just loses it laughing.
How old was he?
Well, he's 15 now, so I mean, probably 12 or 13. It wasn't like he was, So, but I just pictured him from there on out. He doesn't say it around me, but I picture it then on out.
Oh, he's told people.
That's what I mean.
yeah.
I picture him being the hit of school because I'm sure I don't know
Mr.
if that's
Griffin,
something that
this
still
is the
goes around.
principal.
Yeah. And then I pictured him like messing it up and like just not saying it right, like half past the monkey's ass.
Pancreas.
Quarter past the monkey's butt, quarter till it's nut.
There you go. So anyway,
Makes you wonder why was somebody had a monkey on their wrist like that. Like, that had to come from someplace.
well, and I think let's break this down, Aric. You said the positioning of it. Doesn't it depend on how the monkey's standing?
I honestly can't believe we're going to break this down, but okay.
Brady, look at it. Brady's got his arm up.
So if the monkey is facing away from me, I have to lift its tail. So that would be like...
By the way,
Video just enhances this so much more.
that is a man that has pulled way too many things out of dogs' rear ends. 'Cause
And we've heard stories of that
But
too.
did you notice how perfectly he executed the tail? Like, it wasn't awkward. There was no discomfort. He never he never held his nose. He just went right in there and just gingerly.
Like
Ever
a
so-
zoologist. I was very mindful of its butthole and its testicles. I didn't want to hurt it.
Okay, stop. I need to take a drink.
And it was a small dog at that because your pincers weren't very big when you tweezed it.
Because it was a smaller tail. If it was like a lemur that had a fluffier tail, like a ring-tailed lemur, it'd be like this.
If it were a Doberman, you wouldn't have needed to lift anything.
No,
If you want to see the video evidence of this conversation, you need to
You need to
go
get the
subscribe
YouTube
to our
channel.
YouTube
That was
channel.
but we stopped you, Brady. So if the monkey is positioned a certain way, could it be half past the monkey's anus, quarter to his testicles?
If it was facing me, yeah, I don't know how that would tell time. But, it's just
Well-
if you had a pet monkey that was sitting on your watch face,
The spacing in animals is a little tighter, I believe.
No, it Tate.
I can't even.
No, it Tate.
Wow. You never expected this, did you, Matt?
I heard about that movie once.
You're correct. I did not expect to hear him say
No, it tisn't.
Oh,
Oh my goodness.
That one's got to go on a shirt. The spacing on animals is a little. What was you
tighter.
A little tighter.
Anyway, but just to end that, there's no time, right? So if I say that, if that's the saying that I give, there was actually not a time. It's just, it means like I don't want to tell you, I don't know, or go do something else.
Maybe
I think it means I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the monkey's tail or genitalia is obscuring the watch, so you can't say it. So it's somewhere in there. He just doesn't know what it is.
Well, see,
I never took it that way.
Oh, how did you take it then?
Again, it was a measure of the physicality of the spacing of the things in question.
yeah.
Not an actual physical monkey. on
No,
your
not a
wrist?
physical monkey sitting on top of my watch here.
Okay.
It would have made more sense had it said, well, it's spot on the monkey's balls.
Unless you had in this case, if you had a female monkey, it would change the whole analogy.
True. I don't know.
I thought the assumption of the saying was the monkey was a male.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would have to be.
assumption.
Yeah. We probably should stop right there.
We should, yeah.
We should have stopped about
We
5
should've
minutes
stopped
ago.
long ago.
All right, Matt. The rest of the time, buddy, take it home. This is your
The
topic.
last minute and a half is yours.
All right, so
don't worry about that time.
I actually have two, where one is something that was taught to me by my dad, one where I learned something myself, and then if I have enough seconds left at the end, I'm going to tell you something inappropriate I taught my daughter.
Okay.
So,
You got
starting off, when I was a young teenager, my dad taught me how to properly pour a beer into a thermos while he's driving the car so that he could drink and drive discreetly.
Well,
That's amazing.
Yes.
So
And
is
I was
this-
able to pour beer in a moving car without creating too much head in the thermos.
Nice. Is this a something you've used along the way?
No.
Okay.
No, but it did help me learn how to pour sodas and things like that without getting too
or
much
pour a
fizz.
beer when you're not driving
Well, yeah,
without too much head on it.
yeah.
But the great thing about that is didn't all of our dads have a thermos when we were growing up? A man owned a thermos. I don't have a thermos.
I don't have a thermos.
I mean, I have lots of those cups that keep things, but I don't have a
And
thermos.
come to think of it, you don't see those much anymore in the
Kids' lunchboxes.
lunchroom.
Too many thermi.
Do you remember what color it was?
It was off-white.
Off-white?
Like almost
cream
almost like
colored.
the color of this room, just a little bit more eggshell.
Gotcha.
Okay. One thing I learned myself was when I was about 9 years old, we were over at my second cousin's house, and the adult men would hang out in the basement, and they would send me upstairs to pour them a beer. Okay? And I learned pretty quickly that not the entire beer would fit in those red Solo cups, so I would finish up what was left in the can and bring them their red Solo cup of beer. So I ended up getting kind of hammered when I was 9 years old.
That's just pragmatic. That's just good sense. I mean,
You had a taste test, right?
those are great deducting skills. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. I mean, because they probably would have been angry if you wasted it and dumped it. You know what I mean? Like dumped it in the sink or something.
So you actually wrote Red Solo Cup, didn't you? You're walking up the steps, Red Solo Cup.
And then
I've noticed
finally,
both of your stories have to do with beer, though.
well, this last one doesn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
So, so when we lived in St. Bernard and my daughter was in second grade, I would oftentimes have my mom go pick her up from school. Well, I came home from work, and then she's like, "Oh, your daughter got in trouble today." I'm like, "Okay, what happened?" She's like, "Well, she used the B word at school." You know, kind of not like calling somebody that, but kind of like crap. You know, like she kind of messed up, and I'm like, the first thing I said was, "Lily, you can't use those words at school, in front of your grandma, your mom, or church." My mother's like, "Matt!" I'm like, "Oh, or I guess or at all, whatever."
It's whatevs. I mean,
You know.
What
and then
word was it?
And then she was telling me about how there was this girl that was picking on her. And I'm like, well, that would have been the appropriate time to use the word.
So she used it out of context, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm like, learn it. If you're going to say it right.
See, and I will speak as an elementary principal here. First of all, when a kid says so-and-so said the B word, a lot of times it's not the first B word that comes to your mind.
So this is the one that rhymes with itch.
Okay.
Okay.
you're thinking the worst probably most of the
Right,
time, and then it's
yeah.
like, they said butt.
Yeah, they said butthole.
Butthole.
So
That was me mocking you the way you said it.
right. So,
Your face scrunched up. Butthole.
so there's that, and then there's, you really get concerned as an elementary principal when you have kids who, first of all, say the word that you're thinking first, and secondly, they use it in context. That's the ones you really are concerned about.
Yeah.
And usually it's not the case, and when you do get that case, it's like, ooh, not
Well,
good.
and I'm sure that you are no stranger to finding things written in bathrooms.
Oh, no.
And, sometimes the spelling is interesting,
Yes.
But the advice is practical.
but the advice is
Oh,
Made me knock down my top.
But
That's not how you spell that.
Very, very well put.
But also, it's one of those things where I've seen stuff in bathrooms before at the school, and knowing the age that they were probably written, you're almost proud of their skills of sounding it out and spelling it correctly.
You're
using it in a complete sentence.
You're an English language arts teacher, so yeah, it would be a source of pride for you.
Serple indeed.
Inside joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, good topic, Matt.
Yes.
Sorry we went veered away. That's what I do, but I think we all probably, to be honest with you, that's one of those topics where we probably, if it were unrated, we probably could have gone a lot more.
Just real quick before we wrap it up, I frustrated one of my students so bad because he didn't want to say the words. Like, they said the F word. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. It's like, yeah, because fish. I don't like fish either. I don't like. It's like, well, no. Well, and then I went through about 20 different F words. Flags. Oh man, this. And I was sold it totally serious. And finally, he just turned around and walked off. It's like mission accomplished.
Yeah, you wore him down.
I wore him down.
All right, well,
Mr. Fiscus, do you mind if I bum a ride on your Charger there for a little bit?
Is it an iPhone?
absolutely. Go ahead.
Go
ahead.
Charger boy.
Hi.
I appreciate that.
All right, no problem.
With me.
Thank you for the topic.
Well, you're welcome. I knew it was
well,
going to be
Again, we kind of hijacked it and went. You did not anticipate that, I know. But as Todd said, that's what we do here. I'm trying to set different sounds here just to.
Oh, we're not picky.
Yeah.
It could be a howling donkey.
All right. So I am going to take us home here, and we are going to play another game of Misery Index.
Take me home.
Can you remember? Okay, so
Well, I'm pretty miserable now.
yeah, exactly.
We actually have a singer with us now, so we can have him do the singing rather than
Yeah, that's true. Probably would appreciate that much more. Our listeners would. Okay, so I'm going to show this here. Misery Index is the game, and we played this on here before, and it's a neat little thing. It's actually a game show also on some network. I can't remember which one, but there are 3 parts to this board game. We're only going to do one part here, and it is Margin of Misery is the call here. So the way the game is played, I'm going to pick a card out of the stack here, and all of you have writing utensils in front of you, and you can write down the number. The object here is I'm going to give you the misery, which is the topic or whatever you want to call it, and you are going to assign it a number, and the misery index goes from 0 to 100, and the closer you get to 100, the more miserable the thing is.
Okay.
So something really, really awful, miserable, the worst miserable thing you can think of would be scored 100. So the object here is to get within 10 of the actual card.
So the answer is kind of like a survey says they've done the legwork
Right.
and put the
Survey
Yeah.
says
Right.
number one answer.
Number one answer. Okay. So, like I said, I'll give you the situation. You assigned it a number. Object for you is to get within 10. Okay? Range of 10. So, I'm going to put that one away. We've already done that one. I don't know if you remember the number, but...
No, probably not.
Okay. This would be a particular bad thing for podcasters. So the situation is you go mute. You go mute.
Now, are we going to say these out loud or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to go right down the line here.
Okay.
Now, if I remember this game last time, I think I asked this as well. We get no context as to who this would be miserable for,
No.
right?
No, just us. I guess we're answering as ourselves.
I guess you're answering as best as you can in your own thought process.
Want me to start? I've got an answer down. You can work your way down.
Yes, Brady, you get to go first. You go mute.
I said 65.
65 is Brady's answer. Matt?
Well, for me, this would be extraordinarily miserable. So I went high with a 90.
90. Okay. Todd.
I went somewhere in between with a 75.
75. The card says the misery index for You Go Mute is 95.5.
Oh, Matthew.
Matt on the board.
And the winner,
It's a can
It's the Vienna sausages.
America's favorite.
from a European capital.
It's America's favorite and only mini sausages in a can with gelatinous gloop on top of them.
And we're all working hard to get that prize. Okay. So, next situation. Along the same lines here, and I did shuffle these cards, so interestingly enough. The situation is You Go Deaf. You Go Deaf. Remember, the object of the game is to get within a range of 10 of what's on the card. So, I'm going to start with Matt this time. Matt?
Okay, I'm gonna do like a school kid who doesn't know the real answers and just go C down the board and answer with another 90.
Okay, 90 is the answer. Todd?
I went with a very specific 83.
83. Brady?
I just went with 80.
80. Okay.
It's going to be tough going here.
It is. You Go Deaf. Misery index says 96.
Matt again.
So mute is less miserable than deaf.
If Moof comes up next, I'm going to be...
All right. So Matt up 2 to nothing. Running away with it.
Well, I think my luck's probably gonna run out here.
All right. So next
I see you're right.
situation.
I can wait you out.
And this ties into a conversation we had prior to recording here. Shark attack.
Oh, well, you know what I think about
Well,
sharks.
I do know what you think about sharks, but here's specifically shark attack. Lose one arm and one leg. One arm and one leg.
It'd be a skilled shark to get like your left arm but your right leg.
It would.
It's a surgical shark.
A nurse shark. Todd.
I went, Brady always makes fun of me because of my fear of sharks and my claim that they are inhuman, which I stand by to this day. They are inhuman. 100, because I can think of nothing worse than getting attacked by a shark, even if they didn't take anything off my person. I
like your pants.
like my. No, but okay, losing your arm and leg would be bad enough, no matter how. That's awful. But losing your arm and leg to a shark multiplies it, amplifies it.
Infinitely worse.
Yes. So I went 100.
100. Brady.
I said 98.
98. Matt.
I said 92.
92. 96.5 is the number. No, everyone gets everyone gets point.
Oh,
Okay.
Everyone gets point.
Ooh.
So Brady 1, Matt 3, Todd 1.
Oh, I would have been. Are you keeping track of points?
I'm keeping track.
I'll stop then. I was keeping
Oh,
track.
Okay.
But
That's
I
always
wasn't
good.
doing a very good job because I didn't realize that everybody got a point.
Everyone got a point, yes. If you get within the 10 range, you get a point.
Gotcha.
All right. Next situation. Gored by a bull. Gored by a
I'm
bull.
assuming he doesn't bring you a gourd and give it to you and smile and say, "Here you go, enjoy this gourd."
No. This has nothing to do with things that can be grown. It has to be to do with a
Impaling.
horn to the growing.
Have you noticed that all of these so far have been high?
They've been hot.
Yeah. Not much wiggle room.
No.
Yeah.
All right.
1 second. I got it.
Okay, Brady.
I said 85.
85. Matt.
I also wrote down 85.
85. Todd.
88.
88. Misery index. Well, you all think it's less miserable than the misery index does. 90.5. So everyone gets a point.
Yes. I mean, after following the shark, now had the goring of the bull came first, I might have answered a little bit higher. But
Yeah.
See, I would rather fight a bull all day long over a shark.
All right. So Brady 2, Matt 4, Todd 2. Okay, so here's something we can all relate to. Situation is your first gray hair.
I have no gray hair, sir.
Oh.
I have white hairs.
Yeah, right.
I
First,
have,
first gray hair.
Guys all go salt and pepper as you get older. I go cinnamon and sugar.
I was just say I go Mrs. Dash.
All right, your first gray hair.
First gray hair. Matt,
I went quite low on this one. I went 40.
40. Todd.
You didn't have much of a choice, did you, Matt?
Well, I mean, it's white from here on down.
And again, well, we are on video. We don't need to see how far down that goes.
Like he's got Steve Martin
But
in
I
the
know
leg
you
lock.
want to.
The luscious bee.
Oh, you just slid that right through there, didn't you?
He's got the double Willie Nelson beard going. I'm going
It is always on my mind now.
35.
35. Brady.
I said 55.
55. Wow. The misery index doesn't think much of this. The misery index says 6.5.
Wow.
6.5.
Nobody
No
gets
pointless.
Apparently we are wimps.
I guess.
That is pointless, like me trying to explain women.
No points. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Brady said that. I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean I can't explain. Like I'm saying, I
Don't take that on play it by ear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, opinions spouted by one host or that host's opinions only.
I knew what he meant. He was saying,
Yeah.
He was saying
You might
in
want
a.
to pick a different
In a
one. I
mysterious
accidentally
way.
saw it.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah, I accidentally saw it.
You were saying it. You were saying in a complex,
Yes.
appreciative.
yes.
Yes. I know what
All
you
right. Yeah, I see you backtracking. Don't fall as you backtrack. That's fine. All right. So next situation. Massive zit on your nose.
mean. Now, one word could have changed this entire thing. Not the word you're thinking.
Indeed. But I'm nose is the
everybody
word.
right.
I'm assuming the word is nose. I don't know what the word is you're thinking of. But,
I'll tell you what
I'll
I
be
thought.
I'm going to be honest with you. That was the one time where I was not thinking dirty. You guys were thinking dirty. I was just going to say if it said a massive zit in your nose.
I got you.
You guys could write down later or tell me later what you were thinking.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? You've had a zit in your nose before.
Massive zit on
Yeah.
your
I was going to
nose.
say, could you repeat that? Massive zit on your nose.
On your nose.
You know.
Now I
Bring it.
Now, I will qualify this in saying at certain points in your life is probably
Yeah.
more of a massive misery index thing than maybe
probably,
now.
We're probably too old to really give this.
Yeah,
Okay, Todd,
I said 15.
15. Brady,
10.
10.
I also
Matt.
said 10.
10. 7.5
Oh,
is the number,
So
so
we all got-
everyone gets a point.
Now,
Points for
again,
all of us.
had that said in the nose, mine would have gone up at least 25%.
Indeed.
Those are painful.
yeah.
All right, so Brady 3, Matt 5, Todd 3. Again, we're passing notes
I
here.
can't wait to hear what you guys are going to say.
All right. Next situation. New tires, and you hit a nail
With the tire, I'm assuming.
with the tire, yes.
Like a toenail?
Yeah.
A nail that would puncture your tire. It could be a toenail.
We've gotten into slap happy mode. Brady.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's only 8 o'clock.
That's right.
New tires, hit a nail. Brady,
I put 90.
Are you?
990. Wow.
Yeah, I've had it happen.
Yeah, me too, but 15.
Matt,
Sorry.
I went with 20. I mean, you can pretty easy fix.
20. 20, and Todd says 15. And the misery index says 9.5.
Seriously.
So
Todd with the only point.
yeah, missed it by half. Yeah. I didn't want to do math there. I was getting ready to, and I just dropped out. You missed it by 0.5.
Yeah. All right.
Brady, can we get a little explanation on why?
Yeah, my very first new car, my Pontiac Sunfire GT, they had low profile, like performance tires, and about 3 weeks after I had my car, I ran it, and the replacement was quite pricey even by 1995 standards.
But you would think about this though. I get the annoyance of that, but you would put that up there with a shark attack, losing your arm and leg to a shark.
Tire was kind of like my leg. It got me around. No, I'm
And
kidding.
the nail was like the shark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Very
A hammerhead. Oh,
Very
they just
inhuman.
missed that.
Very, very inhuman. Yes. That nail
Okay.
was as inhuman
Did you hear what I
as a shark.
said?
Oh, what'd you say?
It must have been a hammerhead.
Oh, man. Nice.
All right. Next situation. I don't know if anyone has experienced this. Mom drunkenly complains about her sex life. Mom drunkenly complains about her sex life.
I pass.
Can you pass?
No, you can't pass.
Okay, so okay, I'll explain my answer when I get to it.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Matt,
I went with 87.
87. Todd,
Don't I feel dumb? I went with 47.
47.
I don't know. I haven't seen your mom.
Brady,
99.
So you'd rather lose your arm and leg to a shark?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Too bad you couldn't lose your ears to the shark.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
well, the misery index says 12.5.
Oh my God.
See, here's what I'm thinking. This also varies when you would hear it. When you're a kid, a teenager, early 20s, not that it's ever pleasant, but once you're older,
Mr. 47.
once you're older and you realize that, hey, it's okay that they lived life and experienced things too. And now, granted, what would be worse?
I'm
though?
guessing it happened at least once.
Once. What would be worse though? The drunken part?
Yeah.
Like if she were sober,
Yeah,
complaining, would that make it
Yeah,
better?
there are
Yeah, I
many
think
many
so.
levels to that whole situation.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think with the
There's several
being
levels
drunk would
of
probably
discomfort.
give more imagery.
I can see
to
that.
your-
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more detail than what you need when you're. Yeah.
Yes, yes. What is the basis of the complaint? That would make it infinitely worse, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, that probably would be a hard one to gauge. Okay.
Well, and it would also depend.
Oh no.
It would depend on who the complaint was about.
Fair.
If it's dad,
if it's not dad,
if it's mailman,
all
or
right,
the- or the-
stop.
or the milkman if it's the 50s.
Hey.
I was gonna say we always joked it was
The milkman, yeah. I never understood that because no man ever brought us milk. I mean, not even the Schwan man.
So say this can go horribly off the rails more
Next
so than
card.
it already has.
Next card.
Next card.
Matt, are you aware of the Schwan man?
No.
All right.
Okay. You should listen to some previous
So-
episodes.
So again, on the on the theme of losing body parts, and in honor of the 4th of July that just happened, accidentally, of course this is dynamite, accidentally light some dynamite and lose 3 fingers.
Does it say left hand or right hand?
And there is no qualification on the fingers.
Uh,
Light some dynamite, accidentally lose 3 fingers. Now, again, why you're lighting dynamite, don't know.
I'm trying to catch a roadrunner.
Could be. Could be YLE.
Is that a euphemism? So the other night I was trying to catch a roadrunner.
Right after I tried to catch a grungy.
Put the anvil to that Roadrunner.
So I had too much spicy food, and I'm trying to catch a roadrunner.
That's why
And
you
the
got the
doorbell
Tums.
rings.
Got the Tums, right? Okay. Accidentally light some dynamite and lose 3 fingers. Todd.
40.
40. Brady.
Because I'm a guitar player, sort of. 85.
85.
I never
Matt.
even thought about that.
Yeah, I went with 75.
75. 81.
Oh!
81.
I get both showcases.
Brady and Matt with the points.
Nice.
So Brady 4, Matt 6, Todd 4
In the game.
in the game. All right. Again, I think that card was Total Amnesia.
Great band name.
Yeah. Total Amnesia. All right. Brady?
I forgot my answer. I said 80.
80.
Did you hear me? I'm like, well, look at it.
Matt?
10.
10. You really want to forget your life, huh?
Hey, all the important stuff can be, they can reteach me.
Amazingly enough, I've been on stage with you where I thought you had total amnesia before.
We've never been on stage together.
Wah, wah.
85.
85.
But I think there's some context needed for this.
Yeah.
Answer.
Misery Index says 97.
Oh my!
Ooh.
I'm not
I
in
missed it
that.
by that much.
What'd you say?
I said 80.
80. No
Just
points.
a bit outside.
No points for anybody.
What was it?
97.
97.
I was 12th.
12. All right. Down to a minute.
Minute to win it.
Ingrown toenail. Ingrown toenail.
Okay.
Matt?
Well, I've had one, so I'm just going to say 20.
20. Todd?
I've never had one. And I like to think it's because I don't clip my toenails too short. I've always heard if you clip your toenails too short, you get ingrown toenails.
Thanks for that practical tip.
58. I mean, I'm no Rip Van Winkle. I mean, my toenails aren't.
Climb the heck out of a tree.
Is Rip Van Winkle known for his long toenails?
He would.
He is
He
now.
would certainly be what if he slept for whatever.
How many years?
20 years.
20 years. 58.
58. Brady?
I said 45.
45. Matt saved by the 0.5. 10.5
Are you
Because
kidding?
is the
ingrown-
misery index.
The ingrown toenail's not as bad as the removal. That upped it up,
You had your toenail removed?
Yeah, it wasn't ingrown, but just having a toenail removed.
Did you keep it?
No.
Did you put it in a jar?
No.
Toenail in a jarro.
Now I have my thumbnail removed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, I cut myself. I'm not going to say how or why, but I cut myself.
Did it have to
through
do with
through the
thermoses and
thumbnail,
beer?
And they had to give me 9 stitches, 3 of which were where the thumbnail was. So they pulled the thumbnail
Pared
completely
it.
off. Of course, they numbed it first, but then I had to stay. There basically overnight. Just for 9 stitches because they used the wrong stuff in my thumb and it was causing a huge amount of swelling. They thought I was possibly going to lose my thumb.
What do you
That
mean the
was-
wrong stuff? Like they used
Well, you can't the stuff you use to numb.
numb thumbs?
Yeah,
Thumb numb.
some of those things you can't use in smaller appendages like fingers and thumbs because of the amount of swelling it causes. So
Gotcha. Not myself, but I don't think my wife will mind me telling this, but she, you're lucky that
You'll find out if she minds.
You're lucky that you have it. I noticed. I mean, that's a beautiful thumbnail you got there. I would have never been able to tell that anything ever was amiss.
And we know from past episodes when Todd lets German men shine his nails,
That's right.
he's very appreciative of good-looking
I
nails.
know. But when my wife was a kid, I'm going with the sausage again. I don't know why.
You just love the other.
No, when she was born several. She was tiny. She weighed like 2 pounds. Long story short, there was an accident. She was a preemie, so she was like well behind everybody else size-wise up through many grades. I think it was kindergarten.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that
I think kindergarten. It was kindergarten, first grade, something like that. She had her hand on a desk, and another kid, more normal-sized kid, I would say, sat on it and it popped her nail off.
Ooh.
And to this day, she doesn't have a nail on her. There's nail material there, but it doesn't grow into a nail. So that's why when you said you lost your nail, I looked for something that looked like Seiya's nail, but no, yeah.
Nope. All
Yeah,
there. It's all real.
Is that how you test the nail?
Yes, that's how you prove you actually
do it
have
into the
a
microphone
thumbnail.
so the listeners can hear it, though, Matt. You got to flick it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is how you prove that you actually have a thumbnail.
Gotcha. I didn't know that.
Sound like a snapping
Proof of
finger.
nail. Proof of nail.
All right. So, Matt, appropriate for the guest host to win the Misery Index and the grand prize of the Armoire Vienna sausages. We need them to sponsor us.
That's
America's favorite,
Matt, that's 99.
Ian is calling.
according to Falco.
That's a 99-cent can of wieners there, Matt. That's a heck of a prize for you, buddy. And here's the thing. The second ingredient, the first ingredient is sausage, so they're legit.
That's good.
The second ingredient, mechanically separated chicken.
Well, that's the only way I eat chicken.
True.
The deterioration of the chicken family unit can be put on.
Yeah.
So, Todd, you don't mechanically separate your steak. You do that with
That's
your
right.
fingers, right?
So if you're attacked by a chicken, that's what you need handy.
That would have worked for that question about the how many chickens would it take to, or what was the one about the elephant?
What is it? How many malices would it take?
No, it was chickens. Because you said you had one of the greatest unplanned jokes ever there with that.
Oh,
it was
that wasn't a joke. That was some deep thought.
no.
Okay,
but
Jack Handy.
It was your thought out about.
Oh yeah, my answer.
One
yeah.
chicken was it was either. I don't care what the question
Maybe
was.
500 or one.
500 chickens or one, yeah. And
To kill an elephant.
To kill an elephant.
Yes.
And but it was your punchline when you said that the elephant fell over the cliff.
Right.
And said, "What the cluck?" That was the. You don't even remember your own jokes, man.
Oh.
97 for the total amnesia. All right.
Explain why I forgot the punchline.
All right. Thank everyone for joining us. Thanks to our guest host and the voice of the Play It By Ear podcast, whatever you like to call us, Matt Vaughn. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Matt, can you give us some of that beautiful buttery voice of yours?
Yes, dulcet
Oh, yeah.
tones.
Thank you for having me, and we appreciate each and every one of you for watching and or listening. I'm not sure why, but we do appreciate it.
There it is.
All four of
Butter. Consider my bread buttered. I don't know what that means.
I don't even want to go
I'm
into what
afraid
that
I do, but I'll have to explain off air.
There's a lot we have to explain out there.
Yeah. All right. So the usual goodbyes. You can find us on our home website, anchor.fm/Play It By Ear podcast. You can find us on our YouTube channel. Please go become a subscriber, because who doesn't want to see these faces, right? And our can of Vienna snausages over there.
Next time it'll have a friend.
Yes.
Possibly some treat. Or some spam.
Yes, we're taking your suggestions. How do we decorate our area here
Maybe a
for
box
the
of Petite Debras
Maybe.
Could
Maybe
be.
a Boston shake. Brady?
or an unkept Jose. Oh, wait a minute. Please come to YouTube for the milkshake.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you can give us your suggestions on Facebook. You can find us there. Search us out, Play It By Ear podcast. You can give us suggestions on Twitter at Play It By Ear Pod 2. You can email us at playitbyearpodcast2020@gmail.com. And you can find our audio podcast anywhere you can
Fast-paced
find
and priceless.
podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, among others. So, with that, we bid you farewell here on episode 22 on the Play It By Ear podcast.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Play It By Ear podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter at Play It By Ear Pod 2, and our website at anchor.fm/Play It By Ear podcast. Thanks again, and join us next time as we play it by ear.